Good morning, dear audience. This is a continuation of our previous lecture in which we discussed about certain case histories that were designed to make us understand the process of dysphagia and the factors involved in it. Today, we'll be talking in slighter greater detail in which we'll be understanding dysphagia and we'd like to establish what forms it can take and what and how we can actually rate this thing. So dysphagia, as you understand, is an inability, is a difficulty towards safe swallowing. And as we tell you what safety is that there are no risk factors involved. And efficiency means that you are able to eat and swallow to the needs of your body and ensuring that you have your nutritional and hydration values satisfied. So before we talk of it in detail, let's understand what are the factors involved and how can actually we understand dysphagia in a better way. So normal swallow, as you can see, is an innate ability necessary to maintain nutrition and hydration. And there are some stats stating that approximately 580 times we swallow unconsciously. And when it comes to the phases of it, you can see that there are four phases mentioned here. One is oral preparatory phase, oral phase, pharyngeal phase, and esophageal phase. So these oral preparatory phase is the phase in which you are planning to put uh, something in your oral cavity. You have decided it has got, you have decided what to eat, what not to eat, how much to eat, which fork, which spoon you want to make benefit of. So it is more of a preparation stage. And then comes the oral phase when the food is placed in the oral cavity and the process of chewing and grinding it takes place. Then comes the pharyngeal phase when the food travels through the pharyngeal tube, and esophagus is certainly a phase in which the food passes through esophagus. So we'll be talking a bit more about these things. So oral preparatory phase is, as you can see, this begins as the food or liquid enters the mouth. Now this is very important. How much do you want to take a gulp of? What do you want to eat? How much salt do you want in it? Etc. Etc. These all are preparations. You are mentally getting ready. It has got a psychological impact as well. So you need to have an appetite for the food, and that is what preparation is. So you need to contain it, you need to manipulate it, prepare food or liquid into a bolus. And then in the oral phase, what you do is that you conduct the manipulation, etc. So chewing or mastication occurs to grind solid food, certainly. We need to change the status of the food because we have to swallow it. You need to lubricate it, you need to chew it, you need to grind it, you need to make it in a bolus form so that it can easily pass across the tube that is going to follow. So good coordination of these oral motor musculatures are very important. And whenever there are issues with these like lips, teeth, gum, mandible and cheek, certainly the bolus formation will not be good enough and chewing becomes difficult. So the blending of the food in the form of a bolus actually is compromised. And this is where somebody needs to work upon at times, especially in elderly and children, young children. This bolus formation takes a lot of conscious effort. So we need to understand that this might have some issues if this phase might have some challenges if there are compromised oral motor uh, abilities are concerned. Duration is simple enough. You can chew as long as you want. So it doesn't, there are people who are quick eaters, and what they do is that this phase of over preparation is somehow different than the others. Some would chew it for a longer period of time, and the quick eaters are actually not blending the food well, and they are just gulping it inside. During this phase, respiration is normal through your nose, so you're breathing normally, and you are manipulating the food of your choice. Then comes this phase continues, and the bolus now is ready to be propelled back of the mouth. Now is the time that the food has to start its transitioning from oral cavity to the pharyngeal cavity. The back part of the tongue is raised. As a result, the food actually is given some potential energy, and it rolls down and it falls towards the pharyngeal cavity because of the gravity and the gentle push given by the tongue. Duration is 1 to 1.5 seconds, and respiration is still normal through the nose. So we need to understand in oral preparatory and oral phrases, both of the conditions, you are breathing normally and you are actually manipulating the food. And then of course, once the bolus is formed, you are ready to push it back in the pharyngeal region. Then comes the next stage, which is very important and which is the cause of concern in many cases. And it's very common, especially in conditions where neurological involvement is concerned. So as the food pass by these pharyngeal region, uh, while it reaches the tonsils, so this is where this phase comes in between. So what happens is that pharyngeal swallow, as it starts, it becomes automatic. Now it is in no more your control. So what happens is the food is passed back in the back of the oral cavity as it enters the pharynx. That is a stage when your breathing stops. And now the food has its own way to choose. So that bolus has its own way to behave. Now, your body posture, your abilities, your muscular strength, all these things will come into play because this becomes a reflex action. And this reflex action actually helps the food pass through the pharynx and up to the esophageal sphincter, which is a sphincter on the top of the esophagus that's called upper esophageal sphincter, which then allows and it widens and it let the food in the esophagus so that it can travel across the entire range. Now, this is very important. There need to have some coordination. This reflex, which was not under your control, the food has to take just 1 second or so to travel through the pharynx into the esophagus. And if this time period is delayed for some reason, may it be the consistency of the food, or may it be your physical abilities, or bolus was not well formed. So what happens is the given time, while you were in an apnea condition, your breathing was halted. Now, if these seconds click by into 3-4 seconds, you are in the urge of taking a breath. So as you will take the breath, the food might change its way and is sucked into the laryngeal area, and the food is aspirated. So this becomes a very crucial situation as the bolus is transiting from the pharyngeal region into the esophagus. That's why nature has given you some sort of protection, that the moment this reflex begins, you start halting your breath. So this halt is actually is a saving, life-saving kind of a condition. It gives you an extra protection. The vocal cords are closed just to make sure that you don't suck the food in your oral cavity. So just imagine people talking while eating, they might get choked, or they might get the food enter into their respiratory tract, causing a cough reaction. And depending upon the age and ability of the person, these reflexes may vary. So let's move on another side. Now this says what are the protective mechanisms? As just mentioned, you soft palate was a partition between oral cavity and the nasal cavity. Soft palate is a softer palate actually, which moves and it directs the food towards the pharyngeal region. Otherwise, if it was not there, certainly food would have choices either to go into the nasal cavity or into the pharyngeal cavity. Now, this soft palate has softness in it, and it has got some muscular abilities that prevent the food going into the nasal cavity, and regurgitation is avoided. Likewise, while food is passing through the pharyngeal region, larynx is elevated a bit, and as a result, this elevation gives an extra protection to the respiratory tract, and airway is actually protected. Then comes the epiglottis, part of the larynx, which covers the larynx. Again, nature has been kind and gave you another protection so that you don't swallow it, so that you don't aspire the food content. Then comes the vocal cords, they are together. As a result, no food enters. That's why you were not breathing, because the vocal cords actually shuts down to give you an extra pack of advantage so that aspiration can be avoided. And finally, there's such wonderful mechanism of cough that's called a reflexive cough. As the food try to enter into the respiratory tract, this reflex is generated, and you cough it out, whatever goes in. So as in the earlier slide I was talking about, it depends upon the age. If somebody has got a weaker cough reflex, so that person has got an added risk factor about it. So in the case of children and elderly who are still unable to clear their throat, they might have more chances of aspiration. So a person who can actually cough has got the reflexive strength to push the food out of the dangerous region. Then we have got esophageal phase, esophageal phase. In this phase, actually, the food has to pass through through the esophageal region by some contraction. And again, these are involuntary waves, peristaltic waves. You know of it. So these peristaltic waves actually help the food pass down the esophagus in one direction. And of course, gravity comes into play, food consistency matter, etc., etc. It takes around 8 to 20 seconds in this wonderful process of food passing through esophagus. At time, this duration is extended for a number of reasons. For example, what's the age of the person? What is the competency level of his esophagus? What is the consistency of the food? And finally, what's the posture? So all these things actually uh, affect the duration of this esophageal phase. And finally, let's talk about respiration. The respiration is normal, and you can talk and take breath on your own choice. So esophageal phase is again a phase which is not under your volitional control, but it happens on its own. So it is vital that we respect all the reflexes that are taking place on their own. Your muscular strength, your posture, food choice, all these things can vary. For example, lying down and swallowing and eating, certainly it's going to have its impact as far as food traveling through pharynx or esophagus is concerned, because these different angles will coincide with the gravitational pull on the bolus, and this thing can have its consequences. Moving ahead, let's talk about something about disordered swallow. So what is a disordered swallow then? A swallow which is disorder, which has been compromised one way or the other. These impairments actually can be in one, two, or all the phases that we talked about. So these disorders have to be found out if we need to intervene. At times there is aspiration. Aspiration means food is moving in the respiratory tract, which is again not good and can lead to respiratory infections, pneumonia, etc. At times, we can get safe by just altering the diet. For example, we can change the type and texture and taste of the food, and it actually helps swallow. Likewise, uh, people who have got issues with selection of food, actually ultimately they will affect their nutrition and hydration. So we need to alter the consistency, the taste, the temperature, and all these variables actually which help the bolus travel inside this entire solving mechanism. So at times this doesn't work, and we are left with nothing but an internal feeding tube, which can be a nasogastric tube, pass through the nose into passing through the pharyngeal region into the esophagus. So this was one way of it. Then we talk of G tubes, which are actually inserting the food directly into the stomach, passing by all these regions of oral and pharyngeal and esophageal stages. So it depends. How do you plan to get into this treatment plan? So I hope you have enjoyed this thing. If you have got any questions, I would love to be available for the answers. Have a nice day.